Okay, good afternoon or good evening or good morning, wherever you are watching this in the world. Welcome along to our First Point USA rugby webinar. And we are delighted to be joined by UCLA head coach, Harry Bennett. So welcome along, Harry. I'll just do a few quick points before we kind of kick off the actual interview with Harry. So today's webinar's inside UCLA Rugby, and we're here to chat all things college rugby and UCLA with Harry. We'll get his insights on his own coaching background, what it takes to become a player at UCLA, a little bit about the world-class facilities I'm sure you may have seen online, the iconic UCLA campus, and we'll also touch upon the upcoming summer camp that's taking place towards the end of July. Over in LA as well. So delighted to have you on board with us, Harry. We've met this year already at the Roslyn Park Sevens. So hopefully some of you on the call may have chatted to Harry over that week if you were playing in that event. But it's our privilege to have you on today. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we start. We are recording the webinar just now, so if you happen to miss any, if you're late or have to duck out early, we'll send everybody who registered a recording of it. We've got a bunch of set questions that we're going to chat through with Harry, but if you do have any questions you'd like to ask him as we progress, feel free to pop them in the chat box, which you'll see on your screen, and we will we'll endeavour to get as many of those questions asked of Harry towards the end. But we'll crack on, just get a bit of an introduction to Harry. He's been a very successful coach and a successful pro rugby player as well back in Australia. So Harry, just by way of introduction, give us a little bit of background on your rugby playing and coaching career to date.
Hi Ross, thanks for having me here, mate. I'll do my very best to keep this as short as I possibly can. I've been with UCLA Rugby now for 5 years. It's been an amazing experience over those 5 years and continuing to evolve and grow our program on a year-to-year basis. So my background, obviously Australian, born and raised in New South Wales. I played my high school rugby at the King's School in Sydney in the GPS system. Fortunate enough to have a pretty successful team during my time at King's, and always look back on my schoolboy rugby as some of my most fondest memories playing rugby as well. We were lucky enough to win our GPS championship and get, I think, 8 of us into the Australian schoolboys team for that year, which I was fortunate enough to be a part of. And then straight out of school, signed a contract with the New South Wales Waratahs with a handful of other teammates, and was in and around their academy and their professional environment for 3 years. Fortunate enough to compete in a handful of Super Rugby games, which was awesome as well. I think one of the highlights for me coming out of school and going into professional rugby, or that next level of rugby, was my next game of rugby after playing schoolboy rugby was a pre-season Super Rugby trial game against the Queensland Reds. And I think the international caps in the back line for the Queensland Reds at the time in my first game was somewhere north of 150 with Will Genier and Quade Cooper and a handful of those guys. So pretty amazing experience to be able to do that. Mixed it up with some Aussie Sevens and some Sevens pathway stuff during that time as well, and then moved over to the US in 2014 to mix things up, and obviously had a fascination similar to a lot of the guys that are probably exploring college opportunities here in the US. Fascinated by the American landscape. Sporting landscape in America is second to none, and lucky enough to be able to play 7 seasons with Major League Rugby with New York and live in New York, which was a pretty amazing experience, and got to play alongside a handful of some notable players like Ben Foden, Bastereau from France, Andy Ellis from New Zealand as well. And then in 2021, sort of saw my playing career coming to an end, or looking at the next avenue, and always knew that coaching was in my path, and trying to find something that was equivalent to my schoolboy experience back home in Australia. It was a seemingly smooth transition to explore college rugby and coaching at that level. And there was a lot of correlations between, I guess, schoolboy rugby back in Australia, and I'm sure in the UK and all over the world, with what college rugby gets to offer here. And it's been the best decision I've made. And these in the last 5 years have been some of the most memorable experiences in my rugby career, playing or coaching. So it's a bit of a background on me, and obviously eager to dive into some of the questions around UCLA rugby.
Great stuff. Thanks for sharing that background. Hopefully that sets the scene pretty well for everybody watching. So you mentioned you've been at UCLA now for 5 years, working at one of the most iconic brands. I think everyone, certainly it was at Roslyn Park, you couldn't fail to miss you with your royal blue and gold bobble hat and big jacket. So it's a very well-known, very well-respected brand. What is it like kind of walking through the door at UCLA every day as part of your coaching career?
Yeah, it's impressive. I think you look at the facilities and the location alone. Obviously, Los Angeles, California. I think I heard a stat the other day. It was like 290 days out of the year are blue skies and warm weather constantly. So just having that is pretty amazing. And then the campus itself is unbelievable. It's beautiful old buildings. It's right in the heart of Brentwood or Westwood, LA, which is an amazing location within the city itself. It's 25 minutes from the beach, 25 minutes from downtown, 20 minutes from Hollywood or Beverly Hills. So you're right in the heart of Los Angeles as a city itself. And I think because of that, you feel that sort of exposure to all of the great things that Los Angeles has to provide. I think professional sports teams, it's one of, if not the highest number of professional sports teams across all sports in America, which is really, really cool. So from a sporting landscape, whether it's rugby or not, there's so much to go and see and explore, and you're in the mecca of that. Obviously, Hollywood being in Los Angeles and sort of that celebrity profile, pretty cool. And when you go to a football game or a basketball game, men's or women's, it's almost as exciting, if not more, to see the celebrities courtside than actually watching the games at UCLA again. And then talking about the rugby specifically, I tell my players all the time, our stadium that we get to play in is arguably the best college, if not rugby stadium across all platforms in the country. And we have a big, beautiful grass pitch, big tall posts, and a 6,000 seat stand on both sides, which is pretty awesome for our players. And then from a training facility, we get to train on grass, which again is quite unique for a lot of the other college teams that we get to compete against. So extremely fortunate. Remind our players constantly that we get the best of all facets of the facilities at UCLA, and that only, I think, blends or enhances the experience of anyone that steps on campus, and certainly those that get to play rugby with us at UCLA.
Fantastic. Sounds like an incredible place to work in. And obviously, if you're there as a student athlete, an incredible experience for the guys on the team as well. So looking at the rugby team specifically, it's a question that we ask coaches and guests on the webinars quite a lot. What does a typical day look like in the life of a college rugby player at UCLA? And how does the balance between academics and the playing side pan out?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think first and foremost, the understanding that UCLA as a university is highly competitive academically. So any student that's enrolled at UCLA, regardless of being a rugby player, their priorities from an academic stance is the top. They've been in the top 5% academically from where they've come from. And because of that competition, it just fosters an environment for all our players that you're working around or blending with teammates that have also got that ambition academically, and obviously student comes first in that regard. So with that in mind, we've got to make sure that we create that balance that fits well into the student's day-to-day routine and prioritizing the student piece of it first. So it's very similar to, I think, a schoolboy experience in the sense that We don't touch 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. That's where we prioritize for our students to make sure that they get in their classes and their schoolwork and any sort of academic focus as a priority. So that means that we've got to be up and about reasonably early in the morning for our strength sessions. I share this with any of our prospects that we speak to, but LA weather allows us to be outside pretty much as soon as the sun rises. And our strength and conditioning facility that we have is an outdoor strength facility. It's, again, talking Fahrenheit here, 65 degrees Fahrenheit by 7 a.m. Beautiful weather, blue skies. So when we're doing our strength training at 7:30 in the morning, like it's the best backdrop that you could possibly imagine. You're not trapped in an indoor facility looking out at a miserable old day. It's blue skies and you're getting to work hard with your teammates in probably the best environment possible. So we do our strength sessions in the morning. A handful of days we do what we call our dojo session or our contact sessions in a controlled MMA facility. So we'll have rubber mats that our players will go barefoot, and we really, really focus on our contact or our tackle technique after our strength. Then the boys go off, have their breakfast, head off to their classes, and then after their schoolwork's done, around sort of that 4:30, 5 o'clock, we roll back out onto our grass pitch. We've already got dedicated individual extras that our players already know what they're doing when they come up to training session. If any players need strapping or treatment before that, they'll go to our athletic trainers and get all that taken care of before they head out to our training. And then we try to make sure that we're super efficient with our training sessions and we're not going too long. So when we send out our training sessions to our players earlier on in the day, by the time they show up, put their boots on, they already know what's ahead, so that we can be really, really efficient and smooth through those transitions. And our goal is to really, really focus on 90-minute on feet around our training sessions in the evening, which we do a pretty good job of. And for us, everything is about competing with each other and effort through that process. Like, the outcome's already there in terms of what's prescribed to the boys, and the time's already there in terms of how long they can be there. It's what those players want to do within that window to get the best out of that experience. And for us, it's fostering as much competition as we possibly can. So once the training session's done, majority of the boys will then go get dinner together on the world-class and notorious dining halls at UCLA, and then try to get the boys back into bed by 9:30, 10 o'clock, if they don't have any other schoolwork or projects that they've got to catch up on.
Good stuff. So yeah, very much a full-on day then, and that, you know, that focus very much on the student first, athletes second, and working around that in the mornings and evenings. So great to kind of highlight that, and hopefully that's given everyone on the webinar a bit of a flavour of what the student athlete experience entails at UCLA. So moving on to the recruitment side, Harry, I know we've spoken about this. Obviously, First Point are here to help you, and here to help people on the call as well. What level or standard of player are you looking for, and what territories or countries do you recruit players from traditionally, or maybe looking further afield to recruit in the future?
Yeah, so being that UCLA is highly competitive, obviously there is a requirement from an academic stance, first and foremost, that players need to meet or are aspiring to meet pretty early on. So if that's taken care of from a rugby perspective, we truthfully are fairly confident taking on all walks of life. You'd be surprised that probably 30% of our roster come from non-rugby backgrounds, but we're extremely confident within our environment that the coaching and the development that we provide to our players gets them on track pretty quickly. So I'm not here to deter anyone in terms of their rugby pedigree or their background. Obviously, the higher level of rugby that you've played prior to coming into UCLA sets you up to take advantage of getting yourself into that first 15 team sooner rather than later. So taking that aside, and then looking at where we recruit from, or what countries or what parts of the world we take on, I think that's probably the best part of our experience at UCLA. It's such a multicultural environment on campus, and that only instills into the rugby team as well. So I think from last count, we had 14 different nationalities on our squad of 70 players. And our focus is to try and take the best aspects of those different cultures or those countries and blend them into our environment with the rugby team. So we get a lot of kids from the UK, obviously, working closely with First Point USA to make sure that those kids are set up successfully during that application process. We get a bunch of kids from Australia, New Zealand, down in the Southern Hemisphere. We get a bunch of kids from South America, Argentina, Uruguay, Chile. We get a handful of kids from Europe, France, Italy. So again, internationally, it's arguably the best place to be in LA because we have such a diverse mix of cultures that come in, and then obviously for the domestic players across the US, heavy focus around the California kids, but we also have kids from all over the states as well, East Coast, New York, Boston area, Texas kids, Florida kids. And again, like, we're not here to sort of prioritize one or another. If anything, it's more a case of we want to be open to anyone and everyone that's willing to pursue and work hard to apply and get accepted at UCLA, because the end result is, like I said, getting to mix and blend all these different cultures.
That's great. Very, very diverse roster then. And hopefully, again, that's kind of reassured people, no matter what country you're from, then there is that recruitment opportunity there with UCLA Rugby. And I guess just with your Australian hat on then, for any Australians on the call or people who might have played in Australia, what at the top level of college rugby then, Harry, how would you compare college rugby in the US to kind of maybe some of the top schools or clubs back home from your perspective?
Yeah, so I would think if you're comparing it to schoolboy rugby, I'd say back home in Australia, the rugby's faster. Obviously, there's probably more of an integration in terms of skill set across the board, 1 to 15, or even further, 1 to 23. However, the physicality and I think the application of intent in college rugby really surprises the international boys that come into our environment. I think sometimes those players, because they've grown up playing this sport for such a long time, they take those elements for granted a little bit. And then when they come to college rugby in America and they start to play with the domestic players from the US, there's this invigoration of enthusiasm from the American players that I think really grounds the roots of why these international players decided to play rugby in the first place. And it only brings out the best in those guys. So I think, speed of play from a schoolboy perspective is probably a little bit faster back home, but the physicality and the detail in which we prescribe at UCLA is certainly demanding for any player that's coming from any part of the world. And that's just the style of rugby that we like to play. Shoot shield rugby, which is men's club rugby or that level semi-professional below super rugby back home in Australia. We've had players from UCLA that have graduated or gone on exchange during the summertime and have made their way into second grade at certain clubs down in Sydney as well. So again, like, we cater for all types of athletes. Looking at Will Sherman last year being the number 1 draft pick in the MLR coming from UCLA, like, we're able to work with a guy like that, but also a player that's brand new to rugby and also pursue and focus on trying to play D1A first 15 rugby with Will as well. So, I think it's exciting, but also surprising in terms of the standard of rugby that some of these international players come in and really dive into it.
Great. Good to have that mix then of player. And again, hopefully that's given a good perspective on what the playing standard is like, whether you're from Australia. I know you obviously spoke to quite a few players at Roslyn Park, which is a very high standard at that particular event with some of the top schools around the world competing. So again, you can kind of go online and watch some of the match footage as well if it's something you're keen to explore further. And we touched upon it at the start. So you got the UCLA Summer Rugby Camp coming up at the end of July. Harry, just tell us a little bit about what's all involved in that camp, how the kind of structure of that camp works, and what a player might expect if they're either visiting the camp for the first time or interested in applying for it.
Yeah, so we look at our summer camp as arguably the most important piece of our recruitment process. It's open to boys aged 15 to 17 and 11 months, so just before you turn 18. And the reason we do that is we try and focus on players that are about to apply for colleges in the US. The reason we put so much priority on our summer camp is it's basically an opportunity for prospects that are interested in UCLA to get 4 days living on campus, living in the dorms, exploring the facilities, getting to work with us coaches on a hands-on basis for those 4 days. So you're really getting to live and breathe what it's like to be a UCLA rugby player. But from my perspective, it gives me 4 days to really understand, the talent of the player, but more importantly, the character of the player. Like we're really making sure that over those 4 days, we're getting a good sense of, personality traits, work ethic, discipline, teamwork when it comes to, meeting new players for the first time. And the way that we set up our camp curricula is everything leads towards player development and then implementing that into a game on the final day, and how you can leverage your skill set, but also work with teammates that you're just learning to work with over the first 3 days of camp. The other piece of it, which is extremely important, is we have a handful of seminars around our admissions process. So we'll get people in from UCLA admissions to basically sit down with all our campers, provide a comprehensive outline in terms of the application process, best practices, what admissions is looking for, timelines, and then answer any questions that any of these campers might have ahead of applying, whether they're a rising senior or they've got another 12 months to consider application. And that's helped us big time in terms of narrowing the gap from understanding of the college rugby landscape, the application landscape, and those final little adjustments that we work with individual prospects ahead of that application process. Obviously, the exciting piece of us this year is with our partnership at First Point, we're closing that gap even further with working with First Point to be able to help those prospects even further, and making sure that they're fully understanding of the application process. They've been vetted. They're meeting all the criteria ahead of that application window in October and November.
Great. And the applications are still open if you want to register or book a place on the camp, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, July 23, 26. You can head over to our website or social medias, got link in bio for your registration details. We'll keep that registration open pretty much all the way leading into that summer camp. We don't cap it. I know there's probably a lot of international students listening to this webinar that might be interested. I strongly recommend it. I know for a fact there's a direct flight from the UK over to LA, and on-campus housing and food available to anyone. And if you were thinking about exploring colleges already, why not mix it in with the camp where you get some rugby and get to be hands-on with the coaches at the same time.
Excellent. And you've got a Scottish rugby legend joining you for this year's camp as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So yeah, delighted that our director of rugby, Sean Lamont, is going to be working alongside Harry and his team in July as well. So Sean will be there to offer his coaching help, but also with any kind of recruitment advice and college rugby advice. Sean will be on site for the few days over there. So we're delighted that he's able to join you. And we had to twist his arm pretty hard to spend a few days over in the sunshine in UCLA. Sorry. So again, moving back to the potential recruits, I suppose you talk about what you're looking for in a player both on and off the field. So describe some of the attributes that you would be looking for in a prospective rugby recruit.
Yeah, so again, we don't discriminate against positions. Obviously, there are positions that we prioritize, but that's not to say that we're not looking at others. But I think top of mind, obviously, there's got to be a work ethic around the academics. Like college rugby, obviously student comes first, which means that there has to be a priority from the student to make sure that their end goal is to walk away from their experience with a degree in some capacity. It makes life really, really difficult for anyone that's trying to play college rugby if you're neglecting the academic side of things, because you're only putting pressure on yourself. And furthermore, like once your experience playing rugby, whether it's at college or beyond that, it's over. Like you got to have something that you can fall back on and equip yourself with. And it's extremely important for us at UCLA to make sure that there is definitely that priority from an academics. And whether or not you got the best grades or not, we've got time to be able to work with you guys on that stuff. But then if you do get accepted into UCLA, all your teammates are in the exact same situation. So there is a fostered environment of high achieving and motivation around the academics as much as the rugby piece of it. So that's number one. Number two, I talked about the rugby skill specific stuff. Again, we'll develop and coach up players where we see fit. So like that's not as much of a priority for us as it is around character profile. So if you've got really, really good attention to detail, you're committed to your craft, you've got a growth mindset around appreciating and understanding that you're not the finished product, and then have the application and the discipline to be able to go and chip away at that constantly, that stuff for me is far more important than how good you are in your performance or your talent is on the rugby field. I know there's a million different sayings that you hear from coaches, but like talent takes you so far, discipline and work ethic will take you to that final step. And that's something that we prioritize big time when it comes to recruitment.
That's great advice. So again, hopefully you can pick up on that, and if you are thinking about exploring an opportunity at UCLA or any other college for that matter, then those assets and attributes that Harry's mentioned are very, very important. So obviously you've worked in the college rugby game now for a while, Harry. You've experienced rugby in the USA for a good chunk of your career. How have you seen the progress of the game in the States, both at the college level and the professional level? And I guess it must be quite an exciting time to be involved in rugby in the US.
Yeah, it's been massive. Obviously, in my time that I've been in America, Major League Rugby as a professional competition started. I was fortunate enough to play 6 years in that competition. Obviously, it's been an evolving landscape at the professional level, and there's still work to be done. I think the standard of rugby is continuing to grow. As we're recording this webinar, it's literally a day after the Major League Rugby championship game was played where Chicago won it. I think of that team that Chicago has, 70% of those players came through the college rugby system here in the States. Whether or not those players are domestic or international players, fact remains 70% of those players selected to play Major League Rugby came from university campuses and played college rugby throughout their career. So what I think I've seen as well is the gap between player development from college rugby to professional rugby is closing. I think when I was playing back at New York in MLR, there was still such a noticeable jump of even the best players at college rugby, whether they were playing in America or overseas, they didn't have not the talent was there. They didn't have the understanding, the discipline, or the attributes of how to carry themselves as a professional rugby player Monday to Friday to get the best out of their talent, to give themselves the best opportunity to play on Saturdays. So that for me basically gave me the entire template and framework of how we basically schedule our training week at UCLA. It's not just about developing good rugby players on the field, but if you do have aspirations of playing rugby beyond your time at college, how are you applying yourself when you've got to be sitting next to an Andy Ellis or a Ben Foden or a Matthew Bastareaud who have played over 50 international caps? And for me, it's applying your organizational skill, making sure you're doing your extras, making sure that you know your detail inside out so that you're not having to go and ask other teammates or fail in a training session where the expectation is that you're executing at a high level on those types of things. And college rugby is doing an amazing job, I think, in the last couple of years because of the coaching that's now involved in it, of helping those players understand those areas of the game that are vital. I think the other piece of it is with the Rugby World Cup coming up here in 2031, like there's a huge push from World Rugby, USA Rugby, and the governing bodies, National Collegiate Rugby, to make sure that college rugby is in a really, really strong place over the next 5 years. And what that looks like as an end product is basically equivalent of an NCAA program and having professional resources and structure around college rugby for the players involved. And I can't emphasize how exciting that is for anyone involved in college rugby, and particularly for incoming classes. Like, you're only getting the best versions of what college rugby is going to be in America in the next couple of years. So nothing but excitement ahead for anyone involved.
Absolutely, and we'd certainly concur with that. You know, we've seen the growth, obviously, in the number of programs, the kind of level of player that's now gone out there from, you know, some of the top academies, certainly here in the UK, players going out, the level of coaching. When you see the caliber of coaches, you've got, you know, Eddie O'Sullivan at Brown University, for example, a lot of coaches moving internationally and obviously developing in the States as well. So, as you say, Harry, a very exciting time to be looking at college rugby, particularly with the World Cups in 2031 and 2033 coming up in the not too distant future. So yeah, it's a great time to be looking at it. And you talked about some of the players that have moved to the MLR. I suppose as well from your side, looking at those who have graduated as well as professional rugby player, there's clearly going to be players that have gone on to great things and the other side of their career following the academic side of their degree. Have you got any examples you can share with guys that have kind of progressed through UCLA teams and gone on to achieve great things in their career?
Yeah, absolutely. So we got 2 alumni, UCLA Bruins, that are in the men's sevens national team in Lucas Lecamp and Ben Brazel. So Lucas Lecamp went to King's College over in the UK and came over to the States as a freshman at UCLA, and through his time at UCLA, was able to be selected for the men's national team with the sevens, and he's been with them now for 5 years. He's already been to an Olympics in Paris. He's in a leadership role now with the men's sevens team, and I think for us at UCLA, having those 2 guys in the men's national team ahead of the LA 28 Olympics in a couple of years is absolutely massive for us in our program, and to be able to provide a clear pathway of opportunity to anyone that's looking to come to the States. And I actually had this conversation with a UK player that's coming into our team at this upcoming season. But with your 4 years at university in the States, that allows you eligibility pathway opportunities to then go and potentially represent the US at sevens or 15s. Won't dive into the details in it now, but I'm just saying, like, if you've got aspirations to go to the Olympics or potentially a World Cup, and you're trying to understand if that's an avenue of options for you at college rugby, the answer is yes, 100%. The other player, which I mentioned earlier, who was the number 1 draft pick for the MLR last year, Will Sherman, playing for the Anthem this year, has been involved in the men's national team 15 squad as well. So like we've got pretty big high hopes that Will's going to be a part of that 2031 Rugby World Cup, and who knows, maybe even the 27 World Cup down in Brisbane next year. But, when we got Will as a freshman, he was playing B-side rugby for us as a back row lock. So I think looking at his time and the work that he put in, he wasn't always the most talented guy, but the work ethic and the commitment that he showed to just implement himself into the programming and the training and the development that we provided for him created an incredible platform to be the rugby player he is today, and provide him the opportunities that he's certainly going to get in the future. So again, going back to it, it's not about talent. At the end of the day, it's about your commitment and your work ethic that you're willing to put in. And Will Sherman for us is a prime example of what that can look like at the end of your 4 years and beyond.
Great example. And I suppose for every one that goes into professional gaming, it's a very, very hard thing to get into in any sport. Going on to a professional career. I guess one of the advantages or benefits of being at a top university like UCLA is the job opportunities that it provides out with your sport. And I know we've talked in previous webinars with other unis about that alumni network. So from a UCLA standpoint, how in your eyes, how does that help your future employment opportunities and some of the companies that your alumni are working with?
Yeah, it's incredible, and I'm extremely fortunate for our alumni base and their support. So we've obviously talked about the rugby, but to your point, Ross, when our players graduate, or even over summer when they're looking at internships as underclassmen, like we've got a dedicated alumni board and directors within that board that help our students place themselves into internships or careers or networking opportunities. So by the time that they graduate from UCLA, whether it's as an undergrad or a grad student, we've already opened the door in terms of networking and career opportunities well in advance, that by the time they graduate, most of them have already got jobs lined up, whether it's in America or overseas, back where they're from. And again, talking about the broadness or the vastness of our alumni network, it's not just within LA, it's not just within California, and it's certainly not just within the States. We've got alumni all over the world, and we have access to all of those guys, and they are more than excited to hear from a current rugby player at UCLA and help them in any way that they possibly can. Again, there's no handouts, and it's not just around your talent, it's your work ethic and your commitment as a student athlete to get that deal closed for you. But we certainly provide opportunity and facilitate that as much as we possibly can for all our players.
Great. And yeah, I think we can't emphasize that strongly enough from the rugby programs that we've worked with and that alum network in the States. The rugby family or fraternity and any club environment is very, very strong, and that's just amplified 100 times over within the college rugby program. So it's definitely a massive benefit if you are interested in college rugby in the future. A lot of you will be looking at the playing side, but I'm sure a lot of parents will be looking at the sort of employment side for the kids as well. So that is certainly something that you should really take into account when deciding this stage in your career. Moving back to the kind of playing side then, you've recently announced a switch from one governing body to another, and the move for UCLA to go into national collegiate rugby from next fall. Tell us a little bit about that move and what benefits it's going to bring for next year and beyond for your team.
Yeah, it's an exciting move for us. So joining National Collegiate Rugby, along with 85-90% of other college teams across the country, it's put us in a situation where we get to now compete for 15s and 7s national championships in a pretty big way where we haven't been able to in the past. On top of that, and speaking directly around First Point's involvement with this, it's allowed us more opportunity from a recruitment stance, not just to recruit freshman undergrads, but it also allows us to recruit international grad students as well. And we have a handful of international grad students that are now coming onto our roster that got their degree or their undergrad degree over in the UK or somewhere else in the world, and now have the ability to come and do a master's degree or a post-bac degree or certificate program at UCLA and compete on a national level at college rugby with UCLA. Even doing 1 year as a graduate student, whether it's a master's, a grad, or a certificate program, if you have aspirations of playing professional rugby, 1 season with UCLA allows you opportunity to then apply to the MLR draft as well, and look at opportunities to get a contract in the MLR beyond your time there. So from a recruitment stance, it's opened the doors big time for us, which we're extremely excited about. And then from a competition stance, some of the teams that we now get to play against that have big brands, and some of the travel that we get to now do across the country is something that our program's never been able to do or has done in the past. So we're about to announce our schedule for the upcoming season, but once that's announced, I'm sure there's going to be a fair bit of excitement around the teams we're playing against and the travel affiliated with that, because of our connection to NCR in both 15s and 7s for the upcoming season.
Great stuff, and some exciting games to look forward to, which you'll be announcing soon, as you said. So keep an eye on UCLA Rugby's social media channels just to find out a little bit more about that. And so, final question before we kind of move over to a couple of questions from the audience. Then, Harry, what would your kind of biggest piece of advice be for an aspiring college rugby player to best position themselves or prepare themselves to be recruited either by yourselves or one of the other top college rugby programs in the States?
Yeah, a couple things. So start early. Don't leave it to the last minute to then decide that college rugby in the States is something that I might be interested in doing. We always say to all our prospects, it's rather have a difficult choice of many than to have no options at all. So the earlier you can start in your exploration of college rugby, the better it is for you to equip yourself and understand that information as much as you possibly can. Obviously, selfishly, my relationship or our relationship at UCLA Rugby with First Point USA directly is pivotal to that recruitment process. Working with an agency like First Point USA closes that gap of understanding for the family and the prospect and the conversation that they need to be having with college coaches in America. And through that application process, getting that hands-on support from First Point only helps drastically your final product of what your application looks like. A lot of guys or prospects that try to do it independently miss the boat or miss the gap on things because they're not fully vetted through that process, whether it's scholarships, academic requirement, relationship or connection to the coaches, and they're left with minimal choices. Whereas working with First Point USA, it's comprehensive across the board. And for me, I know exactly the final product that I'm getting because of the relationship that prospect has with the agency at First Point USA. And then the final piece, in terms of best advice, is like it's never a finished product. Like you can continuously push your academics and your rugby all the way to the finish line and even beyond your application process, because there's so much movement through the admissions process in terms of students that are accepted that don't commit, students that are put on wait lists, students that aren't, that can appeal. If you can provide new evidence at a later date beyond your application process that is appealing to admissions, that only gives you more success or more opportunity to be accepted. So I know for the UK students, obviously your decisions are provided based on projections, and then you've got your A levels at the end. It's easy for you guys to know that I've got to continue to work hard because I have to for my A levels. But for anyone else across the country, whether it's domestic or internationally, working as hard as you possibly can through your academics and your rugby all the way up until that decision's made, and then even beyond that, because decisions change, is pivotal to being placed in the place that you want to at the end of the day.
Great stuff, and good advice there for, again, everybody on the call, and hopefully again that helps prepare you better. Sorry, my light keeps going on and off, but we'll sit in the dark for the next couple of questions. So we'll just go through a couple of the questions from the audience that have come through. So someone is asking, do you do a fall camp as well at UCLA?
We don't. So we only do one summer camp. Obviously, I know that families have commitments over the summer with travel and family vacation and everything like that. We only have the one camp because we like to consolidate as much as we possibly can. However, if you do miss the camp or don't have the opportunity, we're still definitely gonna work with prospects and catch up with them at a later date. As I said, however, giving yourself the best opportunity to work closely with us and vice versa, get an experience of UCLA is second to none by able to attend that camp.
Great. I've shared the link to the registration page for the UCLA camp on the chat box, and we'll follow up everybody who is registered for this. We'll follow up with a recording and we'll share some information about UCLA rugby camps as well. And Finn asked, do you pick players from 15 squad to play sevens, or is it a separate squad?
I've never heard of a program that's got separate sevens and 15s. So absolutely, we pick players for our 15 squad into our 7 squad. There are different times of the year, so players get to do both. And again, we don't even discriminate based on position. If you're good enough to be a part of the 7 squad and you wear a single-digit number in a 15s game, best man up.
Absolutely. And a good question coming from a student from the Netherlands who, if he was coming over, would be coming over on their own. What can he expect regarding cohesion with the team and with the coaches from an international student's perspective?
Yeah, it's a great question and super important, not just for the player, but for the families as well. So we pretty much get like a 4 to 5 month runway of notice in terms of admissions acceptance until we need players on campus for our preseason later in the year. Through that time, we really, really work closely with those athletes to make sure that, one, we're setting them up successfully in terms of their housing, their class schedule, their flights into town. We connect their families with other incoming families so that by the time they get to LA for preseason, they've already been introduced to a handful of different families, whether that's the same class or older class teammates. And we also match Big Brother or like a mentor aspect of it as well. So a lot of our team captains or our senior players on our squad, I'll actively get those guys to reach out to our incoming players and make sure that they're basically navigating and hand-holding and providing any sort of guidance and insight ahead of, a pretty life-changing experience coming from overseas to LA. So it's thorough. And that only makes that experience for those players even more worthwhile and enjoyable because of that camaraderie and brotherhood that we provide.
Yeah, great answer, and hopefully that's helped guess put your mind at ease for that one. But again, across the board, certainly the rugby programs we deal with, the integration of international students is very, very strong. There's a lot of support out there, mentorship programs, as Harry's mentioned, some of the older players in the team looking after you. And very often, there's either a kind of player care type officer role within the athletic department, also specialist international student officers, for example, who would look after you. So that's certainly a great one. And hence we exist. We recruit internationally and domestically, but international recruitment has been our background. And again, the team at First Point USA are also on hand to support you within that integration. We've got a couple of questions I'll answer just about our trials. So we've got rugby trials coming up later this month. We've got some towards the end of July as well that'll be appearing on our website. So encourage anyone who is interested in US college rugby to head along to the trials. It just gives our coaches the chance to assess players for the kind of playing level and ability. We work within different age groups within those trials. We look at kind of fitness aspects, skills, different skills drills that we work on, and Jamie and Sean and the team who deliver those will also take notes on those individual player performances that we'll then share if you are deemed sort of successful at that trial with prospective coaches that we might be shortlisting for you. So if you can, please register for one of those trials. If there's not a trial near you, you can still apply with us and add match footage onto your athlete profile section of our platform as well. So we do operate in different countries. In addition to the UK, we've been out in Australia fairly recently. So again, if we're not in your country at the moment, please keep an eye on our website for that. And then just a good question from Leo. Position-wise, what are there any particular player positions that are heavily sought after, either at UCLA or with some of the other coaches that you've been speaking to, Harry?
Yeah, I think it's probably the same as any other team, whether it's professional or collegiate. Everyone's looking for tight head props, that's for sure. So I think for international students, if you're a tight five player who's grown up understanding set piece, has game experience around tight five play, that's extremely valuable. And then the other ones are, I think, the decision-making skill-specific positions like scrum half, fly half, fullback. Again, that's not to deter or say that back rowers, centers, or wings aren't a priority for us. Absolutely they are. But there is certainly a desire in world rugby to be able to find that next best tight head, hooker or fly half, obviously. And we certainly are aligned, I think, with the recruitment process in terms of positional needs. But again, if you're a talented wing or you're a talented back rower, we want to talk to you. Absolutely.
Great. And I think that's probably echoed with some of the other coaches that we've spoken to as well. So thanks for your input on that one. My final question, we can't go off at the end of this webinar without talking about another sport, the Soccer World Cup, and just to get your view on how your Aussie team will do over in the States. Think they'll go through the next phase?
That's a bit of a cheap dig, Ross, knowing that they've just played the US and got done 2-0. I think
a rivalry in that one.
Right. I think, well, even in my household, truthfully, I think the FIFA World Cup has been an incredible showcase of the culture and the hospitality of US and US sport in general. And that is one of the things that brought me to America in the first place. And that is one of the things that I love so much about collegiate rugby and just sport in this country is you're seeing the Tartan Army in Boston just having an absolute time and how much the Americans have enjoyed and embraced that experience. You've seen, the Netherlands supporters down in Texas going to rodeos or taking their first crack at Texas barbecue, and just sort of that integration of culture. It's no different to what life is like in LA, and it's no different to what life is like in UCLA Rugby with our squad. So I'm absolutely loving the FIFA World Cup experience. I wish I could watch more of the games, but talking offline, Ross, already about this, what I think I've loved the most is just the cultural integration of all these European teams and South American teams coming to the States and them getting exposed to the culture of America and American sports, and then vice versa, the Americans getting to experience the amazing cultures from around the world. So that's why we all love sport. No other platform has the ability, I think, to showcase such diversity and culture in the best possible way than sport does.
Yeah, I think you've answered that perfectly, and I think from our student athletes who go out to the States, whether they play rugby or soccer or other sports, it's also that opportunity to go and watch other sports, whether that be baseball or basketball or American football on your own college campus. And there's so many students we've sent across to the States who've come back, massive college sport fans. And one of the big things is, if you're on the rugby team going to watch the American football team in a 100,000 stadium or whatever. And I think Americans just really, really embrace sport, and some of the facilities out there, whether that's UCLA or anywhere else, are fantastic, whether you're playing or just going along to watch a game. So yeah, I think the FIFA World Cup, as you've said, has just kind of enhanced America's reputation for being able to deliver incredible sports events. And then finally, looking on beyond to the Rugby World Cup then next year, obviously back home in Australia. Who's your hot pick for who's going to be champions and lifting that Webb Ellis Trophy?
Yeah, it's hard to go past the South Africans just based on the experience that they have. I think the negative hit for them is they may have aged out already, but like you can't push them aside. I think the way that they play rugby is perfectly equipped to a tournament structure. I think I'd be curious to see how the All Blacks sort of reinvigorate their identity under a new coaching staff and seemingly a new roster or a young roster. You look at the Super Rugby title this past weekend with the Hurricanes blowing out the Chiefs by 60 points is some of the talent that's been exposed, which always happens with the All Blacks is exciting, but like, can they get it right? And I think because it's in Australia, just having that experience of playing Southern Hemisphere rugby in places they're familiar with is going to help them. Can't discredit the French when they're on. They're the best team in the world. It's just that consistency of knowing which team you're going to get with the French. And then I think, Ross, for you guys, like if Finn Russell can keep consistency in his performance and galvanize a team around the style of play that he wants to, like, again, the Scots can put on an absolute show. It's, again, World Cup environment's very different to a Six Nations or a Rugby Championship in the sense that, like, that tournament festival style of play means that you've got to be consistent with a little bit of luck, be healthy. But I think those teams, South Africa, New Zealand, France, and Scotland are my picks, I think, to be at the top. And it's hard for me to say that as an Australian, obviously.
Well, we'll keep that recording tucked away, and we'll bring that out next autumn when the World Cup takes place. Harry, thanks very much for your time today. That's been really invaluable, and hopefully everybody who's joined the webinar today has taken something from that. To say there's lots of information on the UCLA website. If anybody is interested, who's either not been to a trial, who's not currently with First Point, but is keen to explore those opportunities, feel free to reach out to us. There's a registration form on our website. If you're starting the process for the first time, just complete a few details with us and we will follow up with you and either set up a chat with you just to chat through the opportunity or forward you on the details of upcoming trials in your area. And whether that's you go on to become a UCLA Bruin or with one of the other programs, then I think, as Harry said, there's never been a more exciting time to be a US college rugby player, particularly over the next few years with the World Cup pending. So great to have UCLA with us and Harry in particular. I think the UCLA campus is something to behold. They're going to be hosting the athletes for the Summer Olympic Games again in 2028. So that's another reason that you guys are going to be a huge attraction. You already are the most applied to university in the world, and I think that's only going to grow. So great to have you. We will follow up, as I say, with some information. We'll clarify some points about the summer camps as well that have been raised as well. And hopefully a couple of you or more will be able to join Harry and Sean over at the Westwood campus in 6 or 7 weeks' time. So thanks everybody for joining. We'll have other rugby webinars coming up over the next couple of months, whether you're at the start of your journey or looking to head out there. If you're one of our clients and going out there in the fall, we've got one that will be just announced in the next few days as well. So some great content coming up for you. So thanks everybody for joining, and we shall see you all soon, hopefully. Thank you.